family episode. Clap in 3, 2, 1.
See?
I didn't know we were doing that. Sorry.
Okay, no, let's
3, 2, 1. Welcome to Podcrushed.
Ooh. Penn hated that. Ugh. That's the first thing he said to us all day.
Yeah, why? What was so detestable about it?
No, it wasn't. It was actually adorable. Your face. You were like joking but kind of serious.
So he said the thing that was detestable was my face.
Yeah. Let's get that on record.
No, but hold on.
Your
That's not
face.
detestable. I just want to be clear that that was the thing that made me just go, oh, you guys are so shiny-faced,
Earnest.
fresh-faced, little
fatsos. Just like add to the
little fatsos. No, that's where you're taking it. Mine has solely to do with your hard-earned
face.
naivete in the business of show.
I was just trying to think of ways that Penn could continue to like further insult. Penn, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this for a while. When you travel economy, because you sometimes do, what is that like?
Not anymore, but very recently I did.
Okay. Well, until your very recent years, what was that
Yeah.
experience like? Like, what would happen with the people next to you?
I mean, well, first of all, it was awful. I don't know what your experience is like, but there's excrement on the floor. It comes up to your knees sometimes.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know how you deal with the smell. So the way I used to rock it until my current show, it just wasn't really ever, I would deal with it a lot, but it was not quite at the level that it is now. And I just feel like I was also younger, maybe. I was more nimble. I was more...
But what was it like? Like, what were the reactions of people sitting next to you? Like, did they try to talk to you?
Sometimes would be somebody who reacts the way you've seen somebody react, and then you just sort of...
But you're trapped
it
with
just
them
passes.
for 12 hours or something. I mean, it's quite different than like a stranger on the street.
But I think in that context, just always was like nobody really wants to talk all plane flight, And I mean, like there was a sweet spot right after I became a Baha'i that I would just use it to eventually tell anybody about the Baha'i faith. and then,
Were you the guy, let's clarify this. There was the story on Dumois that a Baha'i walked up to someone at a diner at like 3 a.m. and was trying to teach them the Baha'i faith. Was it you, Penn Badgley? Because there's only 3 options, let's be honest.
Well, wait, was it a famous Baha'i?
Yeah. They were like Dumois only posts stories about famous people. So there was like a famous Baha'i came up to me at a diner at 3 a.m. and like kept talking to me about his religion. Was that you?
Kept talking to. So I think you
like,
normally
well,
can read the room.
Talking.
And I normally can read the room, but at 3 a.m., who's to say? It's possible. It's possible. There's a short list of us.
Yeah.
I could text the others.
Yeah.
And
It's
ask
one
them.
of you three.
I feel like it's highly possible.
Yeah.
But I'm careful about that because I definitely don't want. I mean, it's only if it's relevant and someone asks and then they're interested.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Like,
I feel like you're a considerate guy.
Yeah. I feel like all three. I'm thinking of all three. I don't imagine any scenario
true,
where one of them
actually.
like marches up to someone at a diner at 3 a.m.
I think this was probably the one thing on Dumas that's inaccurate. The one.
Yeah.
Everything else
Okay, so we're talking
Yeah.
about Justin Baldoni and Rainn Wilson. First of all, if any of us are in a diner for any reason at 3 a.m. and somebody's talking to us and then somehow,
Yeah.
I mean, sure, all three of us are definitely going to share.
Yeah.
But is the context that we were like annoying and cultish or something?
Yes.
I think it was cultish was the context.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I am nothing if not culty.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Lean
Yeah, I really
into
don't
it.
know.
That's your
I
brand.
don't know.
So if you're trapped on a flight with Penn Badgley, he will talk to you for a few minutes, but then, you'll both listen to your headphones, do your own
But
thing.
let's be clear again, not anymore. Private or first, all
Private?
the way.
You're flying
baby.
private?
No, are you kidding me? No.
Can we get a seat on that?
Yeah.
Did you guys see that Rainn Wilson was on a flight maybe a year ago in first class, and the guy next to him was watching The Office the whole time, and then he, at a certain point in the flight, like takes his mask off and asks the guy, like, what are you watching? And he's like, oh, The Office. And he's like, I've never seen it. He has like a full-on conversation with this guy about The Office. And then, or he does that while he has his mask on, and then eventually he takes his mask off and the guy's like, oh.
Rain's voice is so distinct, though.
Yeah,
I feel like, yeah. I mean, but you wouldn't suspect it. You wouldn't expect that that's happening.
I haven't seen
Can
that.
you
That sounds really fun.
Yeah.
That's about as iconic as it gets too, because the Dwight Schrute character, The Office, and the fandom that show elicits is so significant.
And the guy even said, he's like, the first few seasons they're finding themselves, but it gets better later on. He's like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Sophie, would you say that The Office is a show that has brought your family together?
No, actually. My dad and I watched The Office as it was coming out together, just he and I. That was like an activity we did together. We watched it on our iMac, actually, because we were in the Philippines.
iMac, that's so charming.
Yeah, the like white big iMac. We would watch it together. So it's definitely brought my dad and I together, and it's brought David and I together. But I don't think anyone else in my family really watches it like I did.
Nice. Yeah. That was my segue into today's
yeah. We're talking about family today. I'm starting.
Don't you
work.
love these host episodes?
We're such great podcasters.
Yeah, it's getting better.
I am clocking in.
Pow, pow, pow.
Okay.
First question.
You're like, I didn't actually care if it brought your family together. I'm just realizing. Okay. Well, someone did ask us what are core practices that strengthen the family unit. I would say watching stuff together is something.
For sure. I feel like watching TV is something that bonded my family. I'm thinking specifically my dad and I, we would watch So You Think You Can Dance. It premiered when I was in college, and every time I'd come home, he would like record the DVR them or something, because it was a different setup obviously than now, and he would save them, and then we'd watch them together, and we would always like cry. And I just remember that show being like particularly bonding for us. And then we actually went to a live taping of it, and it was really special. Yeah, but I'm trying to think, there's a whole family. My mom was kind of the outlier in pop culture taste. I'm trying to think if there was a show that we all liked. I think we all liked Friends. I think that was very bonding for our family.
We watched The Voice. I've said this before.
Yeah. Also, did you do the Great British Bake Off? Is that one also for you guys?
There was a time, and I'm trying to think of when that was. There was something I used to watch with my stepson back when he was like 10 to 13. We would watch, what was it called? Something like Catching Monsters or something. It was a fishing show.
Oh, okay.
Nava immediately lost interest.
I was like, this cult guy can't stop.
It was really, really sweet. And I think Dom would be able to watch every now and then. But yeah, The Voice has been the singular show in our family, which unites us all.
Besides TV, one thing that's coming to mind is my parents each had, not intentionally, but each had something with each child. Like my mom, often it was like coffee dates or lunch dates. Sometimes she'd pull me out of school and she'd be like, let's get lunch together. And that was
so
really sweet.
Yeah, that would be really
Would you drink
memorable.
coffee then?
No, but we would go, she was obsessed with coffee, and we would go with her, and I'd get a pastry or, hot chocolate, something like that. And then with my dad, it's, I loved going into like tech stores with him, like Radio Shack or
Radio
Best Buy,
Shack.
that type of thing. I just loved doing that with him.
That is really sweet.
I think it is hard to find one that unites them all, like The Ring.
Yeah.
It's because especially as they get older, and if you have a big age spread, it's but yeah, you got to find something with each one.
I'm just having flashbacks. So I grew up in Puerto Rico, and my name is a last name in Puerto Rico, or in some Spanish-speaking cultures, Nava, but it's not a common first name. Anyway, I remember sometimes when I was sad, there was a street near my school called Calle Nava. And the first time my mom took me there, I was like really sad about something. My mom had discovered it, and she just drove me there. And I like instantly cheered up. And sometimes when I was sad, she would just drive me on that street. And I'm like, it's so narcissistic, I guess. But it would really cheer me up.
My street.
Me on my street.
My people.
Yeah. And one other thing we would do in our neighborhood, we lived near the ocean, but there was also like a lagoon a few blocks from our house that there was like a concentration of fish right at the sort of like right where you could overlook the lagoon, and you could see them. And sometimes if I was feeling sad, my mom would walk me and we would just go watch the fish. And it was like, it would always cheer me up. So those were two things. Yeah. But I guess spending time together and finding out like what your kid or your parent or that member of the unit you're trying to connect with, like what's their special thing, and doing it with them.
Member of the unit. Such a loving term
Any other practices? I think going on vacation, serving together, if that's your jam, praying together.
What do you mean? What do you mean by serving?
Like in our family, we did a lot of service together, and I would say that often it made me hate my parents. But I think in the long view of time, it probably bonded us as a family. But we did a lot of service together. Like we opened our home for things. We would visit the elderly. We would visit sick people. Whenever we went on vacation, until I was in college, my mom insisted that we do a local service activity. Like we could not go on vacation without doing service. Yeah, she thought it was really inappropriate to just like take a vacation without any meaningful component. Wow. Like to her, that was a waste of time.
I love that.
Yeah. But when we went to college, she let that go. She's like, they're developed as humans now. Just take a real vacation.
Finally. Yeah. She's been waiting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which parent are you most like personality-wise? I'm definitely most like my mom.
Actually, I want to, because we've heard a lot about Helen, and I want to hear more about this, but how are you like your dad, and how aren't you like your dad?
Gosh, I wish I was more like my dad. He's he's like very wise. He's very thoughtful. Like I remember when I was a teenager, if I did something, there were several times where I did something that was really disappointing to my parents. And my mom's reaction would be to like get really emotional, yell, or whatever.
Yeah.
That was her way of showing disappointment. And then my dad was very measured, and he would kind of balance her out. He's very affectionate. I'm very affectionate too. Yeah, he's a wonderful, gentle dad. Really sweet guy.
Sweet. Which parent am I most like? I feel like I'm a good blend. Growing up, I was way more like my dad, but as I've gotten older, I have developed some of my mom's traits. So a bit of a blend, but more like my dad. Definitely, my dad and I are two peas in a pod. We play. This isn't that funny. I don't know why I'm already laughing, but we play Match Game. Do you guys know that game?
No.
See, this is the same earnestness that earlier I was like, but see now in this context, it's
Wait, do you mean
so funny.
like
You're so
like,
earnest?
Like the memory card game? Like you match two
there's
things?
There's a game on TV called Match Game. It was like a 70s game show that was rebooted. Anyway, there's like 5 seasons of it, and basically there's a panel of celebrity guests and then 2 normies, and they're trying to like match words. It's hard to explain, but my dad and I play along. So we'll like pause.
Sounds kind of simple, actually.
Yeah. So my dad and I play, and we so often write the exact same word. And there's one where you do it in order, like what's your top answer? What's your top 2? And we'll write it in the same order, and none of the celebrities will have written it. So it's not like we wrote the obvious answer. It's just that we think in the exact same way. And it's like nuts. Yeah. So.
Yeah. If you spend any time with Nava and her dad, it is like two peas in a pod. Exactly.
It's like a comedy routine.
Yeah.
You really should have that.
We should do something.
That should be the podcast right there.
Yeah. Also, the way we fight
that's a hidden
is
camera show.
Is so stupid.
Yeah.
We fight over
No,
stupid things.
at least the way you. So I've obviously never seen you fight.
Yeah.
But the way you talk about it is very. That sounds. It's like an Abbott and Costello routine.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Penn? Which family member are you the most least to like?
I would say that probably a pretty even mix of both. I have a lot of mannerisms, and then of course the way that I look from my father.
Penn looks exactly like his father. It's kind of nuts. Yeah.
Yeah, it's although I see differences that others seem to be less aware of. Like we have very different noses, but then whatever. My mom, I'd say, there's things. There's definitely things.
So many things.
There's definitely
thing 1, thing 2. I want to tell a story.
Thing 1, thing 2. That's cat in the hat. There's at least 3 things. No, I'd say probably. I was going to say affability, but I don't know if I'm affable. What does affable mean? If it is true that I'm generous, then I think that comes from my mom.
Yeah,
it is true.
I think it is true. Yeah,
it is true. Yeah.
When
you're easy to get along with, I would say you're affable.
Sure.
Is that affable? Okay, yeah. I was like, that's not what generous means.
No, I don't know if that's what affable means. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I am easy to get along with. That comes from my mom.
Yeah.
When for anyone who doesn't know, in the Baha'i faith, you need to ask for consent before you can get married and have a Baha'i wedding. Consent from your parents. because marriage is supposed to be something that not only brings two people together, but like two families as well. So anyway, David and I were asking my parents for consent when we were getting to know each other. And before my mom immediately said, yes, absolutely. And my dad was like, I have some questions. And he asked, what do you love about each other? Like, what is it that makes you want to get married to each other? And I was like, well, these are my parents. David's probably nervous. I'm going to start so that he has time to think. And so I say a few things, and then it's David's turn, and he takes a long pause. He goes, oh, so many things. It's a lot, Sophie's great. And I was like, say one thing, say one. And in the end, he said all the exact things I had said about him because he could not think.
He was just so nervous.
Yeah, he was so stressed.
That's really funny.
Yeah. Say one.
You know, the interesting thing about when we say that, like why we love somebody, I've always thought that has this interesting context where it's like, therefore my love is conditional.
That's true.
It's like I've always thought that it's like, I get it.
Yeah.
But, after you've said, I met Dom like 10 years ago, let's say. So like how many more times can I write something, the thing I love about you? And there have, to me, I've just thought about it in the last probably, 4 to 5 years, a lot. Like when we say like, and then I love about you, and I love about the way you do this, and the way you laugh when this, and the way your hair falls, and by the way, if it's anything physical, like get ready to lose that, at some point. And I don't know. What do you guys think about unconditional love?
Actually, as you were speaking, I was wondering, do partners have unconditional love for each other?
Yeah, I don't know,
because I feel like there are some conditions like if David cheats on Sophie, she's leaving him, she's blasting it all over social media. There's like a revenge plan happening.
Yeah.
But it will be one of those like Us Weekly images, where the paper's torn. That's the picture above the post.
No, but I feel like, I don't know. It is a real question. Maybe.
Is this funny because it seems so clear that David would never cheat?
Just to be clear to the listeners.
Because that's why I think it's funny.
Yeah. David would never cheat on Sophie.
Never.
Because he knows what would happen. Sophie has made it so that he will never cheat on her. No, it's a real question. I've actually been wondering about it recently. I think the love between parents and children, barring some strange exceptions, is unconditional. Sibling love, I think, is unconditional, but I don't know if romantic love is unconditional. People divorce late into their marriages. I don't know.
When you love someone enough that you want to get married to them, there is some part of that love that is inexplicable. It's just a feeling. And why do we have to qualify
Codify it.
Yeah.
Qualify it's better. I just wanted to say codify.
Stick around. We'll be right back.
This show is brought to you by Symbiotica. I started taking Symbiotica because I was working very long hours on my show, finishing the last season, and I was still finding the time to see my family, which meant I was not getting a lot of time to sleep. I was getting run down. I was worried about getting sick, and I didn't want to sacrifice the time I spent with my family. Couldn't sacrifice the time I spent at work. So I wanted to see a bit of a change. I wanted to get in better shape. Since taking their products, I've noticed that I have had more energy. I'm not as worried about getting sick. I'm sleeping better. Honestly, I think vitamins can make anywhere from a huge to a subtle difference. I've never felt more supported by a vitamin regimen. I've never even spoken about a vitamin regimen. This one, it's pretty impressive. They are formulated with the highest quality ingredients out there. Symbiotica is transparent about how and where they source their ingredients to ensure you get the best products possible. Their formulas don't have any seed oils, preservatives, toxins, artificial additives, or natural flavors. Their flavors actually are shockingly good. I take the glutathione, the magnesium L-threonate, I think is how you say it, and the vitamin C. The vitamin C tastes delicious. The magnesium is like a dessert treat. I rely on the glutathione and the vitamin C in the morning for a kick because I actually don't drink coffee. The magnesium I've heard is very good in coffee, but I take it almost like a treat before bed or in the mornings when I am feeling like I haven't had enough recovery. I take it then or kind of anytime I feel like I need it. yeah, I can't recommend this stuff enough. So, feel more energized, alert, and balanced with high-quality supplements that work. Head over to symbiotica.com/podcrushed for 20% off plus free shipping on your subscription order.
This was an interesting listener question. I'm not even sure if I fully understand it. Maybe you guys can help me. Growing up, have you had difficulty staying friends with people who you thought had a healthier family? Does that mean like who had a healthier family than you did, or like you thought they had a healthy family and then they didn't?
I think what they mean is like if you had a tricky family dynamic, did you have a hard time being friends with people who had a healthy one?
I think that's an interesting question because I can't really think of a case where I was genuinely, I'm thinking the people I was close with and they all had very similar family dynamics. It was probably part of why we were friends and why it stuck. I do, on this show, I'm just trying to think of a joke where like, I don't know. I mean, Sophie, your family is comically,
Yeah.
you know, I know that you have all your problems and stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just act like you hate each other. Dad, you're being less gentle.
Just for fun, just when we're practicing our drama.
Being less gentle.
You're being less gentle. Mom, you didn't lay with me tonight and ask me how I'm doing genuinely.
Honestly,
F&B.
this is actually whenever I bring up like issues with my family, this is what it sounds like.
Yeah,
You are perfect.
You lowered the bar for 7 hours of today. And then you apologize, and when you apologize, I just wasn't really feeling it. I just wanted to be on my phone and stuff. By the way, thanks for paying my phone bill.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to get off as soon as I can.
That is exactly what it sounds like.
It's sweet. That's
It is really sweet.
Well, so do you feel jealous? You have a hard time? I'm joking.
No, actually, I'm old enough that jealousy is not what I feel. I feel something else.
What do you feel,
girl?
I feel like it probably brings me closer in touch with my grief. But then also knowing that it's very sweet to have, to know you are a little bit of an outlier of like probably anybody I've ever known, which having like a very
I think so
healthy
too. David has said to me before, like, your family is not normal. Like, it's actually helpful for me to know that your family is not normal. But yeah, I hadn't felt this growing up, but I put this question in here because I do know people who have felt that growing up. I've heard friends talk about that.
Tough to be friends with you because of
not with me, but just in general, that phenomenon.
Well, you don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, they just dropped out of my life.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
Talking about those friend breakups.
Yeah.
I have so many friend breakups.
Yeah, because they're just like, I can't deal with her family, bro. I cannot deal.
No, but I do think this is a real thing that people do face.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm fortunate. Like, I'm grateful for my family, but we definitely have fought, and I won't give too many details because it's, not for me to share, but my dad and I have really not had real fights. I mean, we've had like really stupid fights where we're like yelling at each other at the top of our lungs. Not frequently, a couple in my life, but over the most idiotic things. But we had a real fight last summer, and it was like our first real fight, and it was late into both of our lives to have it. And it was like a real fight. Like I took a day away on a family trip. I like booked my own hotel room, went to my own city, just like needed to cool off. He also needed to cool off. But it was really hard, actually. It kind of like disrupted the dynamic for a little bit. And my sister and I had our own thing. But Jen and I are sort of like great, volatile, great, volatile. That's like part of our pattern from our whole lives.
That's how we are.
That's just not as strange for us to have moments like that. But it just took us all longer to recover than usual. That's not going anywhere, but just wanted to be upfront that like don't have a perfect family dynamic, have had these things. But I love being around solid families, and I love being around happy married couples. Like it's something that I like seek because I want like hope in that. Like to remember that there are people who are happy in their marriages, to remember that there are people whose families aren't like just like unhappy or always fighting, or it's just like always like a slog and a burden. Because sometimes you get that feeling from people. So I like being around people who are like so happy to be in their family. And I feel like it's like refreshing, and it's like, oh yeah, that would be worth it if I could find someone to do that with.
Yeah. So you're saying you're avoiding people facing difficulties.
Yeah. If you're facing difficulties, that's not the vibe that I'm looking for.
And Sophie's like, well, I'm just going to hang out with my family. So.
Well, I feel like I should clarify, since you clarified.
Yeah.
Obviously not a perfect family. We fight all the time.
But close.
Yeah, close. Pretty close. Close as you can get.
Yeah.
The clarification only proves.
So it was like, I've dreamt of having a big fight with my dad.
Yeah.
It's so gentle.
I had a nightmare once. Yeah. Do you ever blame your family for the negative emotions that you have now?
Yeah. Who else are you going to blame?
Yeah.
It's true.
God? That's who you've got. And if you don't believe in God, you've got your family.
Yeah.
Who you hate.
Tell us one family tradition.
Well, hold on. We could think of. I mean,
you want to keep going with that one? Yeah.
I mean, we have something to think about here. So there's a blame is a word. I'd say ultimately blame. No, you can't blame anyone for what is it? I mean,
for your negative emotions.
For your negative emotions. I mean, yeah, you really can't blame any. I mean, there's of course exceptions to a rule like this, but there comes a point where no matter what's been done to you, no matter. I mean, no matter. You can't, you can understand the source. You can understand if there's an event, sure. But then there comes a point where even that, you can't blame anyone really for your negative emotions.
Yeah, I think probably the first step when you recognize like a dynamic or that you have or a negative emotion that you have, first step might be like, blame your parents for it or blame your family for it.
You need to be more gentle.
Second step might be like not blaming them, but understanding that's the context that you came from. And then like the final step, which hopefully you can get to, is just like moving past that and figuring out where you go from here. Like, I feel like you can't continue to bring up your family as like the source of your issues. At some point it gets old and it's like, well, then you're not dealing with it. Yeah. Like, move forward.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, I don't want to say complicated, but because my mom has passed, I think there's just a natural...
You got to get out of jail free card?
No, there's like a natural habit to not want to think about someone in a negative light who's passed. So I don't often think about her shortcomings. She had many, like any person. I was very familiar with hers. My mom and I really were like oil and water for a long time. And then as I got older, our relationship got much, much closer. But when I was little, we fought a lot. My mom, with that thing I said about me and my dad, not the case for me and my mom constantly.
When you say little, how little?
Like until I was like 18. My whole life until I was 18. But my mom and I were like, would butt heads a lot. We were quite different and fought a lot and both very dramatic. But there's like one particular thing that I struggle with that I just like recently was like, this is really my mom's fault. And there's like really something that she did that was like pretty toxic. And to just like be able to like say it. And I called my sister and I talked to her about it. And it was like, I'm not like mad at her. But I feel like I need to be able to say it, even though she's dead.
Yeah, definitely.
That like, she really shouldn't have done that. And it like harmed me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think about it often because like she can't defend herself. We can't have a conversation about it. Every time you revisit a memory, you change it. So, you know, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that acknowledgement is important too.
Actually, Penn gave me really helpful advice for those of you who do pray. In an area of my life where he feels that I struggle, he was like, hey, you should ask your ancestors to help you. Do you remember what you said? It was like, ask your ancestors to show you what they've passed on to you that's harmful because all of this stuff is inherited. Do you remember this, Penn?
I do. I mean, to be fair, I say that to...
Say it to everyone, but say it to our listeners because it was very helpful.
Well, I mean, it's just basically what you just said. I mean, to me, it's like... And I think it's also it's a helpful idea for even those who are like kind of dabbling and agnostic and I don't think I can say it any better than you just said it. It's essentially that a lot of what we're dealing with is inherited. A lot, you know, a whole lot. Yeah. And then the other stuff is cultural, which is technically inherited in some way. So I think, you know, the people you came from who've most recently died, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, ask them for help because you know, in some way, they're the best if they were alive and you could go back and be like, hey, what were you dealing with that then your kids were dealing with that now I'm dealing with? And actually, I logged onto Instagram for the first time in a very long time to check my DMs, as one does. And I also noted why I don't get on it and why I put it on the last page of my home screen, because I got stuck on it for like 17 minutes. And I saw something that I'm pretty sure was narrated by Edward Norton. I'm going to pull it up on my phone. I took a screenshot of it. So he says, for many of us, our generational curse is avoidance. And from what I understood, our grandparents all were living in a world that was ravaged in a way that it had never known. And a lot of that has been anesthetized by good war movies, almost in a way. It's like we've ennobled it, we think of it in certain lights, but like the world was just sort of rocked, and nobody knew how to deal, basically. And so basically everybody drank more, and they didn't need to already, but they did, and you just have a whole generation of people just avoiding intense pain.
Yeah.
And so we did inherit that. We have inherited people who don't know how to deal with serious, like unprecedented pains that shook the world culturally and individually. And so we find ourselves in a very strange age where we've never been more connected, but we're never more isolated from each other. And this is one of the reasons why. And it is not only generational or cultural, it's both, and it's really vexing. And what seriously, like what respite are we ever going to have unless we at least think to look to our ancestors to both for help, but also like to forgive them. To me, the beautiful relief of like a spiritual framework when it comes to your family lineage is that you can have a rapport, and who knows until you die what that actually is and what it will be. But I just think it's such a dynamic. I wish I'd adopted it earlier. I wish I really had thought about that growing up. I could have used it.
So Penn gave me that advice, and I started to do that.
I said all of that.
Yeah, it was so long. But he gave me this advice, and he's like, I think you should pray and ask your ancestors to show you like what you've inherited that's harmful, and ask them to help you let it go and to work extra hard to help you. So I started to do that, and I guess I singled out the women in my family for some reason. So I started praying, my mom and my two grandmas, Sabiha and Martha. And I've never felt particularly close to Sabiha, who's my mom's mom. And it happens to be my namesake. My middle name is Sabiha. But after I started doing it like a few months later, I've never shared the story on the podcast because I wanted to tell the person first, but I have told him. So I feel like I can share it now. But basically I was like getting to know someone sort of loosely. I considered it getting to know each other. I don't know what he considered it, but I also broke it off and then regretted it and tried to like take it back. And he was like, we're good. And I was very sad. And
tried to take it back as in you
to
wanted
be like,
to
no, I
start
take
again.
it back. Let's keep going.
Okay,
and he was like, no, I'm good. Let's take this break or whatever. And like a week later, and I felt the lesson was super clear. Like the thing that triggered me, the way that I handled it, that I avoided saying what I really felt, just cut it off instead of being vulnerable, asking questions. So it's like, oh, I know exactly what I did wrong in this situation, but I can't seem to reverse it. And I was really sad for about a week, which is actually a short amount of time for me. Normally I'm sadder for much longer. But part of what helped me was that for about a week, I was very sad. I was having trouble sleeping. I was feeling like forlorn. And so one day I was sitting in my living room, and in the Baha'i faith, we have revealed prayers, and they're organized by occasion. So there's like prayers for when you're sick, prayers for healing, prayers for spiritual growth. And there's a section in the prayer book called Prayers for Families. And in that section, there's a prayer you can say for your husband. Anyway, so I was feeling really sad, and I was like, I don't even know what to pray about. I just don't want to feel this way. So I'm going to say one prayer for every occasion and see if like one of them hits, like if one of these will like help heal the wound. And so I started saying like, in alphabetical order each section. And then I got to the family section, and I hadn't decided whether I was going to say the husband prayer or the ones for parents or whatever. And my grandmother just walked in the room. Like I could just see her clear as day, Sabiha. And she came and sat down right next to me. And I wasn't even questioning it. Like I wasn't like, what's happening? It was just like, oh, my grandmother's here. And I looked at her, and she looked at me, and she was like, you don't be so sad. It will come around when the timing is right. But you can't be upset at him, and you can't judge him because you didn't handle this the right way. but just like give it time and it'll come back around. And then I said the prayer for husband and she was like right next to me. And when I finished, she was gone. I didn't like see her leave, but I saw her enter. And then a couple weeks later,
she's still there?
she's still in my living
Should we
room
let
right
her
now.
out? She's locked in.
She's like, she's stuck.
She's locked in with your
trapped.
dogs.
She's trapped. But 2 weeks later, he and I met up for coffee. And on the walk to the coffee shop, I had a panic attack. And I've only had a few in my life, but I've had 2 around this person. And I was like on the sidewalk, like having a panic attack, like couldn't breathe. And my grandmother just came and she just stood right next to me and she interlinked her arms with mine. And it's the strangest thing because I couldn't physically feel her doing it, but I knew that that's what was happening. And she just helped me breathe. And it like helped me calm down. And then I started laughing at some point and she was like teasing me. She's like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, it's just a guy. You'll be fine. Just go. And it was really helpful. And I only recently connected it with the fact that Penn had been like, pray to your ancestors, ask them to help you. It's like, oh, I think she responded.
Yeah.
You know?
Aww.
This was really meaningful.
Really sweet.
I think we should, there should be like a J-Lo era romantic comedy where the protagonist is just surrounded by her ancestors
Yeah.
who are all dead.
It's actually a really good idea.
And she's like, no, it's okay. And then they're like all around her, like, oh, jeez, you know.
Like
And she's just always helped by. Because it's so funny. Because Sophie's also just listening, like, yeah, totally normal. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dead grandparent
Yeah, I know
just
exactly
there
what
with
you mean.
you.
You didn't
You
see her
actually
leave.
do.
I get it.
You know exactly what I mean.
And then so actually the 2 leads are just like talking to each other, and they're totally accepting that dead people are surrounding them constantly, and sometimes they're just like, get out of it! I can't even see my friend. There's too many dead people in this room. Can you guys just please give us a second? Yeah. Anyway.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. I thought this question from a listener was interesting. Do family members need to know the boundaries you've set with them, or is that just for you? And I recently saw something on Instagram when I was scrolling for more than 17 minutes that boundaries are something that you put in place. Nobody else has to know about them, but that what we have come to mean when we say boundaries are requests of other people. Like a lot of the times when someone says they're setting a boundary, you're making somebody else do something. But really a boundary is just like something that you are putting in place. And you just, you could let someone know that you're doing that, but it shouldn't require anything of that person. So I think if we're really setting in place healthy, quote unquote, boundaries, then our family members don't need to know about them. Like it shouldn't be something that somebody else needs to do something for.
They exist, I think, is the point. I think real boundaries, they exist. It doesn't mean, and it's all imperfect, and we struggle to understand this, and I've struggled to understand this, but I think boundaries are what they are. You know, you realize, like, where is the boundary? Is there no boundary? Is it too close? Is it too far? Whatever it is. And then I think we all need to put in work to sort of to move it to a place that's healthier, you know, because a boundary isn't literally like this perimeter with signs that you put up. It just never works that way, because otherwise you're making a request that sometimes is like, it's sort of unnatural, it's forced, it's just, in fact, I think if you state, there are a lot of times in real long-term lived life with family, especially, a stated boundary does very little, you know, like it'll just seem maybe passive aggressive sometimes, I think, depending. Obviously, consult your physician. You know, this is not intended to treat or cure any disease of any form. But, you know, so I like that. I like whatever Instagram account you got that from. So I think that's good knowledge.
Thoughts on cutting off toxic family members? I don't have experience with this.
There's no one way to slice it. I think it's really, really contextual.
Yeah.
I think, we were talking about boundaries a moment ago. This pertains to that. I also think the word toxic is one that is probably, it's used a lot, as is the word trauma, as is like, we all could do with taking more and more responsibility for the circumstances of our interior life and our external life. And if we're putting a lot of that on family and feel like it's their fault somehow, then that's true to a point, and then there's a point where you just have to live your life. Cutting off family, I mean, well, so if we are supposing that at death, we all this relationship continues, there is no full amputation, So I think it's sometimes silence is really healthy and great. It seems for certain moments, for certain times. And then there's others where it's like, well, you can't deny the relationship that exists unless, in the not super rare actually cases, but like, the unfortunate circumstance where being around them is literally unsafe, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then I don't think you're cutting off a toxic family member. You're dealing with an abuser, and you have to know
abuse.
that's a specific set of circumstances in and of itself. So
Yeah.
I would actually then ask, what do we mean by toxic?
Yeah. I think outside of the most extreme cases where it might be warranted, I wonder if it maybe ends up taking up more space in your life and in your brain if you cut out a family member. Because I think it's going to be painful to do that, even if it's someone who you don't enjoy being around. It's painful in the end. And I wonder if it does more harm than good.
Well, this might be too reductive. I agree completely. In like cases of abuse, there are cases where someone is not healthy enough to be present in your life or your children's lives. And that's that. But I think I've mentioned this before, but an epiphany that I had this year is just like how important it is to be able to initiate difficult conversations and how much I hate doing that. And actually, I was listening to this audiobook. Maybe it's The Road Less Traveled. It's like a very famous self-help book. It's one of the early ones. I can't remember it. But the author of it, he sort of, he defines neuroses, and I hadn't heard this definition before, as like someone who can't accept reality, so they create an alternative reality. And he was saying that part of what causes neuroses in people is not knowing how to address difficult situations and have difficult conversations. So they just avoid, and then they just kind of like author their own reality rather than like facing the difficulty head on. So he was saying that the one of the most important things parents can teach their children is how to have a difficult conversation and how to meet difficulties in life, because it's part of the pattern of life. So don't teach your children to avoid it, but like head on, how do you address difficult things? And I was saying like, that's incredible. I think that would be incredible parenting like that. I think that's such great advice. And I wonder if even this thing of like cutting off people who are toxic, if some of that snowballs into something really toxic because early on you don't have a difficult conversation. Like I wonder if there's some prevention that we could have if we could just like address things head on very early on before. That's not always the case, of course, but
No, totally. I think that's really valid. Speaking of cutting off toxic family members, I think we should end this podcast at a tight 60. Why not?
Wait. Well, we had let's do one more story if anyone remembers, just because it could be a fun way to end. One prompt was just tell us your most unhinged family story. Does anyone have like an unhinged family memory, unhinged family story? This isn't unhinged, but it's kind of sweet. So it's not the question, but go ahead. I'm gonna ask it. This is just like a sweet family memory. It happened a couple times, but there's one time that I remember distinctly. So we had a gathering at the Baha'i Center. I think I must have been like 13. My sister was 16, and then my parents were in their 50s. Anyway, there was this one gentleman in the community. I'm actually going to say his name because I'm saying this with fondness. Frankie Perfecto. And
That's his name?
That's his name, Frankie Perfecto. He was also in his 50s. And he loved to close out a meeting with a prayer called the Tablet of Ahmed, and he would lightly chant it in Spanish. And it's a very lengthy prayer. And when he would say
that would take about what, like 8 minutes or something?
Something like that.
Because if you're chanting it, that's...
Yeah, chanting it. And when he would start, sometimes my sister, because he wouldn't always do it, but he would often do it, we'd be like, please, Frankie, we just want to leave this feast. Please don't say the Tablet of Ahmed. And so when he would start, we would just look at each other, and sometimes we would lose it. And my parents would usually like glare at us like, that's so disrespectful. But there was this one feast where I think my parents also really wanted to leave, and we were like about to leave, and then Frankie started it, and we all... And we all looked at each other and we just lost it. Like the four of us were hysterically laughing, and we had to leave the room one by one, like a little walk of shame. That's really cute. It's one of my favorite family memories.
Sweet.
You know, I think if you're chanting it, because I use that one a lot, and I think if you say it, it's like...
He's the guy at the meeting that everyone's like, oh, God, Ben.
No, I don't say it at meetings. But so it's 5 to 7 minutes if you say it. If you're chanting it, that thing is
longer.
at least 10 minutes.
Yeah,
it's at least 10. It could easily be
15
15 or 16. So yeah, that's a tough one.
Recently, my family took a trip to Mexico City, and we took like a short side trip to a beach town, and we didn't know, but it was like hurricane season.
Oh.
And we were all there with actually, my brother was the only one with his spouse. My sister and I, our husbands didn't come. So it was like my sister, and I, my brother, his wife and family, and my parents. And we were in this villa, and there was rain all through the day, but it seemed like manageable. But it was like an indoor-outdoor villa, so you're kind of like exposed to the elements, and you have to go to get to each room. You have to be outside, and as the day is progressing, the rain is getting worse and worse, and then it gets to be nighttime, and the lights won't turn on, the power's out, the water's out, and my brother's wife, Millie, had gone to her room, so like basically a separate structure with her baby earlier in the night to put her to bed and just stayed there. So for a short time, it was just like the original 5 members of our family, which, you know, when spouses start to enter the picture, and then especially when children start to enter the picture, that happens far less, you know, and changes the dynamic. And I remember on this trip, I wasn't pregnant, didn't have a baby, and I was the only sibling without like my own nuclear family. It was the first time I had seen my sister with a baby, and I was already facing some kind of like grief around that, like my family changing in a way that I wasn't prepared for and that I wasn't even part of.
My family's becoming more beautiful and diverse. It just keeps growing, my family. My great family just keeps getting bigger and full of better people. Where's my dad? I need somebody to be gentle right now because I'm being so rough with myself and my family.
Yeah, that was me.
What's the deal, God? What's the deal? Huh?
Complaining about nothing. About
Sorry,
blessings.
continue.
But so for a short time during this storm, it was just the 5 of us and no lights, no power, anything. And we were all kind of like in hysteria because it's like flooding and it just like kind of feels like the apocalypse or something. And it's just the 5 of us, and my brother is like going into characters that he hasn't done since he was a kid, you know, and he would like act for our family or whatever. We're just like all kind of falling into those old roles. And it was pure like pandemonium. It was just like screaming and laughing. And we were like making fun of my brother that he was like making excuses not to go back to his family because we were like, you have to go back to Millie and your child. Like, this is a scary time. But he had to like cross a river, like a big flood to get there. So he was like, I think they're fine. Like, he was making excuses. And it just was like such a sweet moment. And it made me want to manufacture more moments where we get to be like our old playful little crew.
Yeah, that makes sense, Sophie.
Yeah,
that's really sweet.
Well, you guys are making me think of because you didn't tell unhinged stories, but you told very sweet stories. I'm thinking of I mean, this is a little bit unhinged because the context for it is a death. So the oldest, my aunt Susan, who is now on the other side, has now died. She got sick very suddenly, like I mean, to be fair, I think anyone who was close to her, which to be fair was not a lot of people, but my mother was. My mother was living with her at the time. I mean, she was not she'd had years of alcoholism and stuff. So like, that was its own thing. But she just suddenly one day was like, I think I'm dying. And then within 2 weeks, she was dead. So, but for these 2 weeks, the whole family came together in this way that really for me was unprecedented. I mean, the only other time I can think was when their father, my grandfather, was dying. And that was not, I don't think, as sweet. That was probably just properly unhinged. And I don't really have any great memories or stories from it. But this really was. It really, really was. And I think just all the side stories we were having while everybody was sort of rotating in that room in the basement to spend time with her, there was such a preciousness to it. And what was funny is that, it was the first time the whole family had gotten together, and members of the family, like amongst that generation, he was a step brother. I don't remember exactly how much he actually grew up with the family. And his name is Tommy. Shout out to Uncle Tommy. He, I hadn't seen that man in many decades, and he was a cool guy. And so just all this, like my uncles, we were hanging out. And because I don't think anybody had really seen me that much since I had become a Baha'i, which I think was for our family, is like, oh, he's like found this religion? Interesting. Everybody was asking me to say prayers. Like I was the family priest or something.
That sounds right. That's right for you.
Yeah, no, it was. And everybody was just kind of like, hey, Penn, say that prayer. And I was just like, chanting the Tablet of Ahmad 16 minutes later. No.
In Spanish.
Yeah, right. Just channeling in Spanish.
Yeah.
Just didn't even know it before. Gracias, Susan. Yeah, it was fun.
Nava, you have an unhinged story. I have one line unhinged story.
This is, it was just me, my mom, and my sister. We were at Costco, and I think my birthday was coming up, and we were maybe shopping for my birthday. I was in a foul mood. I don't remember what the thing was, but basically I was sort of like wanting them to leave me alone. Mm-hmm. But they wanted to ask me questions about like the food that I wanted for my party or something. And anyway, my mom and sister came up to me. I was sort of like doing my own thing. And my mom and sister came up to me, and my sister probably remembers this story better than I do because I don't remember the exact thing that happened. But basically I had like something in my hands, and my mom like tapped me. I think I was mad at my mom in particular, but I don't remember why. Anyway, she tapped me and to ask me about this food that I wanted. And I didn't know why she had tapped me, but I had sort of like left to cool down to go to this other aisle. And so I turned around, and I guess I like put the thing down, and I made claws out of my hands. And I was like, leave me alone. And I said it like that. And my mom and sister lost it. They got hysterical, which of course made me more mad. Yeah. I was so angry at them. And then for my birthday, they gave me Monsters, Inc. themed things because the little girl does that like shape. Yeah.
That's really cute.
When you tell stories, you are making it funny, but I know that at the time it was real for you. But there's something about it that it's objectively funny. Like it's objectively funny that you would actually make claws and grit your teeth.
Alone.
Yes. It's like something she saw on TV, like, this is how to be mad.
Yeah. Right. I learned this from Sophie's dad. Yeah. He indicated, not from experience, but from observation, what it looks like when somebody's very angry or upset.
Well, he was very disappointed in my sister and I growing up because we were not gentle. We would fight like cats and dogs.
With claws.
And I remember him one time telling, just like an indication, so you can like kind of picture what my sister and I were like. Yeah. One time I remember him separating us and saying, Sophie, you never spit on another human being.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
Yeah. That's the perfect note to end this episode.
Yeah.
Listeners,
all right, crushies.
As mad as you get, crushies, don't be spitting on people.
Nowadays, people are like, don't shame my kink.
Yeah, that's true.
See ya.
Bye.